Hey, this is Notser, and today we're doing some ship news. We're talking about 0.9.2's IFHE implementation. Wargaming has just launched round 2 testing, and it has further adjustments. This has been a confusing patch already, so they added even more. Why did they, and what's the impact that it has on the game? We'll try and talk about that. Now, the game in the background is myself in the Thunder. This is the Tier 10 British battleship, and it's really awesome, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. Now, 0.9.2 is a big deal. It's going to go down in ship history as a very important patch. Slingshot being removed for dive bombers is a really big deal. Literally just had a game yesterday where someone used Slingshot against me, and of course he did full damage and killed me, and nothing I could do except watch my AA do 0 damage to an invulnerable state dive bomb. That's always fun. So I'm very, very happy that Slingshot's going to be gone. So as far as I'm concerned, 9.2 is already a success just through that one change. But that's not the only thing that's changing. In round 2 testing, IFHE's HE penetration for tiers 8, 9, and 10 is being nerfed from 30%, which is what we experience right now on live client, to 25%, which will match the tiers 1 through 7 round 1 testing. So it's obviously weakened the skill, and it's for a good cause. Wargaming was concerned that light cruisers at tiers 8, 9, and 10 with 1/5 penetration get a base pen of 30 millimeters. And with IFHE, that base pen of 30 millimeters, the old version allowed them to cross 38 millimeter penetration, which is the deck armor of pretty much every American battleship at tier 8, 9, and 10. That encompasses, probably 8 to 10 ships, premium and non-premium. So that relationship was on the brink of being drastically altered in favor of the light cruisers if IFHE was implemented as it was designed in round 1. Now, 5% is, of course, a nerf. The only other relationship that it negatively impacts because it reduces your ability to cross the threshold is the Akizuki, the Kitakaze, and the Harugumo would only have 31 millimeters of HE pen with IFHE if they implemented that one nerf to IFHE, the 25% versus 30. But Wargaming is implementing an HE pin buff to Akizuki, Kitakaze, and Harugumo. They will now be able to pin 30 millimeters base. So they basically get 1/3, which is obviously incredibly artificial. But for the sake of the game, it seems that Wargaming wants these ship identities more than it wants the player to be able to feel like the commander skill impacts their ability to play the ship. And if I'm honest, that's the way it should be. These commander skills should not be mandatory skills to take. They should be options, and if they're not options, then that means one of the skills is too good. Obviously, IFHE is one of those skills that's too good, and it has a cascade effect. It forces more people to take fire prevention because there's more fire in the world, and if there's more fire in the world, then people who put out fire or actually activate fire on ships, they're competing with other people. So it feels like just a fire-starting simulator. And I'm sure that there's a lot of battleships that don't like that. So for them to change this so that 30 is the base on the Harugumo, the Aki, and the Kitakaze, that allows them to decide for themselves if they want IFHE, just for that battleship relationship. They won't be able to cross 38, obviously, because it's 25%. But you will be able to cross 32. And 32 is significant for French battleships across the entire ship. It's significant for most British battleship armor, and it's significant for all battleship armor bow and stern. That's a big deal. That relationship is drastically impacted, but only that one. All the other ship relationships, DDs, cruisers, aircraft carriers, nothing changes. So if nothing changes when you're playing against most of your opponents, but a major relationship changes, is that still worth the 4 points? It could be for some, but it could not be for others. It's really on that player, and I need to do the numbers. I gotta see if it is worth it or not for something like the Akizuki, the Harugumo. You have to compensate by building back up your fire chance so much that you lose out on rate of fire, which you would have obviously benefited from for those ships. It's a really big question. It's one that is much more challenging than IFHE currently is. IFHE is sort of like, is it a light cruiser? Take it. Is it a small ship? Take it. Do you want to be able to do this? Take it. It doesn't do anything to you. But after 9.2, and especially round 2, IFHE, 50% of your fire chance is going to be gone when you take it. Can you afford to give up 50% of your fire chance for a little extra pin in a certain relationship? For some, yeah. For others, no. And it might even be down to maybe even a clan or team strat, whether you go all in on IFHE or you go all in on something else. You know, obviously fires are, I think, 75% recoverable, and obviously it depends. If it's Brit, I think it's even higher than that. But in general, fire damage doesn't stick on something like a battleship or a late tier cruiser because they can heal it back up. So that relationship is further adjusted. This is the single greatest change to the game that they've ever implemented. It's going to have a cascade effect. It could cause battleships to not blindly take fire prevention for tanking, although I doubt it. It is also going to affect the relationships with DDs versus cruisers, cruisers versus battleships, and cruisers versus cruisers. Whether they are using it or not, you know, it's depending on the target, and you'll know immediately based on where they locate their shells, obviously. But I'm really jacked up about this change. I think that obviously IFHE is too good. I hope that even the most ardent supporters of IFHE knows that. But I do have concerns that this new IFHE, while being more balanced, is not really balanced correctly around the commander skill points. I mean, 4 points is a lot. And if you look across the other skills, pretty much it's 4 points for complete benefit. There's not a compromise or a downgrade in one aspect of your ship in order to use it. And yet, here's IFHE over here, where it seemingly is just as much of a downside as it is an upside. And for 4 points, that is just a lot to ask. That might be the most important thing to ask, you know. It'll still be beneficial, but is it going to be 4 points beneficial? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. And whenever I see a Smolensk blow up, I feel a little bit of joy deep in my stomach. You know, it's like butterflies of excitement. But yeah, is IFHE still going to be chosen? Is it going to influence the way that DDs fight cruisers in clan battle? It could still obviously do that. You're still going to have the pin, and you're still going to be there. It's all down to how the strat is going to work. Are you going for alpha, or are you going for an extended out engagement? I think that if you are going for alpha, that means that you're going to lose out on your damage, your average damage per game. It's just going to go down, obviously, because you won't have as extra bonus damage of fires. But fires are not considered alpha damage, but they do help with alpha because they are a constant dot ticking on a target. They are similar to a secondary as well. The collective ends up doing a lot of short-term damage. Is it going to be something that you can overcome with pin? You know, are some of these ships just going to be able to still exist completely fine, taking IFHE, not caring at all, and still feeling just as rewarding in every single situation? I tend to say no, and I tend to say to myself, instead of taking IFHE, what's 4 points that I can invest in other things? And this seems to work very well with regard to battleship questions. A great example is Basics of Survivability. Now, that's a 3-point skill, and it reduces the duration of incapacitations, floods, and fires. And, you know, all that's great, but damage control reduces that to 0. And if you have it up as a battleship, you actually experience a state of immunity to fire. And if you do this frequently, then there is a significant portion of the incoming damage that the enemy cannot actually set fire to over the course of an entire battle. And through testing different builds that cost the same, I came to the conclusion that the old Basics of Survivability build does not align with my play for battleships. And in fact, I've actually increased my win rate and just done an overall better job of tanking for my team by absorbing the changes in preventative maintenance and high alert instead of Basics of Survivability. Is the same thing going to happen with IFHE? I hope so. I'm already going to try implementing radiolocation on my radar ships. I would love to see something like the Haru having radiolocation. You could also just go all in on basics of survivability, demolition expert. You could have maybe expert marksman, so you have faster turret traverse. You know, you could spend more points on level 1 and level 2 skills so that your ship's, you know, gun damage is higher while not compromising too much on pin, because most of these ships, they get extra pin baked in by default. So I'm super excited for that. I love that the Daring and the Jutland don't need it anymore. I love that the GK won't need it anymore. Honestly, I love that secondary battleships can't really use it anymore because it just penalty is so great. I think that it was always an awkward skill on battleships. In a world where secondaries are so over budgeted, having to take another skill is just so silly. And you might be going, well, secondary builds are silly, so why not take silly skills? They're only silly when they're inefficient and they can't compete with other builds. Would it be better if the builds were balanced so that they can compete against each other, and it's up to the players' play to really dictate how their build is successful, not that, oh, their build's just bad. They just chose a skill that's bad. It just doesn't feel good. And this brings me to another thing, obviously. Commander skill tree. Could we ever see a little bit of improvement there? Maybe incrementally, just as the ship balance seemingly is moving, and I'm very happy for it. The fact that with the incremental changes, they are now removing completely the Sigma buff once the second one goes in of the Kremlin. That's exactly what I was lobbying for, to try and bring it into a balanced state. I think that along with the Pan-Asian buffs that they're getting and just addressing that in that way, that's great. I want it to continue. I don't know that it's completely there, but I want it to continue. I want Wargaming to be more aggressive, to bring ships that have been irrelevant into relevancy. And I think that also applies to the Commander skill tree. I would love for Wargaming to do a very similar exercise on exploring if they buffed a skill slightly, or nerfed a skill slightly, or changed the cost of a skill, or change its association or its effect. What impact that would have on the game? Would it make it better, or would it make it worse? Naval Legends, the World of Warships Legends version, the console, they have a lot of unique passives. Could we bring some of those passives in and assign them to commander skills that are not popular or not successful? I always want the game to improve, and yes, with IFHE being addressed, a huge improvement, but we still have a lot to go, and it's what's keeping this game alive. The interest in it and the quality, it can always improve, and I hope it does. I'm excited. 9.2 looks pretty good from my point of view. Love the slingshot getting nerfed. Love that IFHE is side grade. Curious to hear your thoughts on all this, though. What do you think? Thanks for watching. If you'd like to check out more of my content, you can click the most recent or the most relevant uploads. You could also choose to subscribe to my channel. We do daily World of Warcraft videos, first impression, how-to, news, and review related. My North American recruit invite is on the screen. You can take advantage of that. I stream at twitch.tv/Notser. Thank you, have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.